Okay, hello everybody. I am so excited to be here. I am Jessie Lucas, the founder of Embodied Movement Training, and I am here for another round of the Conscious Body Conversations series. And if you've been following along, if you're watching this in real time, we are entering the second half of 2021. The first series published earlier, the very beginning of this year. And one of my inspirations coming out of this crazy time that we are going through on this planet is that we're ready for these conversations, these deeper layers that really influence our whole sense of self and well-being. If you know my work, it is in the world of movement and embodiment. I have been a yoga teacher and personal trainer, and I love helping people feel better in their bodies. But our body conversations wrap around so many different topics. And one of my favorite humans is here to share her perspective today, Amber Huyghe, who I met when we both lived back in Vermont. She is a tenured former radio personality. And when I started hearing this woman's voice on the radio, I met her through my ears first, and I was like, oh, this woman has some things to say. And it just, she had this like radiance that came through the sound waves. And I was so grateful to eventually meet her in person. And we started a now many years long friendship that has stayed connected over many moves into different states. And one of the things I love about Amber, she has a podcast, A Walk Back to Self-Love. And if you follow her on social media, if you don't, please do. You'll see this theme of autonomy and empowerment. And one of the choices she made was she left radio to control her own content, to have that freedom of saying what she wants to say. So I'm going to let her do just that. Amber, thank you so much for being here today. I want to hear more about your walk back to self-love, and tell us your story and what's top of heart when you hear these themes and topics today.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jessie. I love you and what you do for your community, and just the deeper connection and the transparency that you hold, with the conversations and the work that you do. So thanks for letting me be a part of this. When I think of self-love, I think of a deeper level than what society tells you self-love is. Don't get me wrong, yoga, stretching, massages, facials, girl time, like all of that is so important. But what happens when that's not enough? What happens when there's more from you that's being pulled, but you don't understand what's really going on within your body, within your mind, within the space that you live in? And that's when I don't know, call it the soul call, call it maybe what I was supposed to do in this life, but I started to separate from the old life that I was living that didn't feel authentic to me anymore. And then I went on this journey of a spiritual awakening, handling my own inner garbage, whatever you want to call it. That's what I started to do for the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And nothing is more earth-shattering to your nervous system, to your mind, to your body, than when you wake up and you realize you want to walk away from something that you thought was going to be your entire life. And then what? Then you got to face the outside criticism, or the people that had become mentors and supporters of you within a set industry or field. And then you telling them, yeah, I don't know, I just want to go out there and like find myself. And they're like, what? Like, what are you going to do? And especially coming from radio, I used to get met with, well, where are you going to get those kind of experiences elsewhere? Because it's a unique industry. You get to meet celebrities, you get access to concerts at that time, before COVID, and all of these tangible, exciting things that you're not going to always be met with that when you go on a search to find something outside of that. And so that's kind of how I've been living my life. And it's been very interesting because, as we know, as a society, you have to lead with your titles. You have to lead with your status. And when you no longer have that, what are you leading yourself with? I'm just on, riding the wave of life. And then people are like, what does that mean? Oh, you're unemployed? And you're like, well, no, I'm trying to discover myself. I'm trying to find myself. People are like, well, did you find yourself? And you're like, so it's like you have to become creative with your verbiage of how you explain yourself to people, because you have to introduce yourself to people. People want to know what you do. Where do you work? Not gonna ask you how much you make, but in their minds, they're like, I wonder how much they make, you know? And so it's been its own kind of work trying to figure out how you fit into society or the circles that you're trying to get into or not get into.
Oh, okay. Let me let me grab a few of these nuggets here. And this is one of the reasons I think you and I, stay connected all of this time and keep reconnecting. There's a few things that you said there. One of the things, this shattering thing that happens to your nervous system when you wake up and realize, I need to walk away from this thing. I know I've experienced moments like that. A few key ones, a small handful of key ones that I'm thinking of, and I can only imagine that was a something that stood out to the people who were listening. And I think that ties back to what you said initially. When you say a walk back to self-love, I think we're coming off of this conversation that was more surface level, this self-love of, like you said, the yoga classes, the baths, the naps, the girls' weekends, and, things like that. And how I've come to see, because of the space I work in movement and my own personal experiences, self-love is really taking care on that nervous system level and figuring out what are you going to do so you live in an environment where you have a felt sense, a body sense, a heart sense, a mental sense of safety, of I can be my true self in this. And I know from watching your journey over these past, 4+ years, that you've made decisions that have walked away from things that it was like you said, that this fitting in thing, I mean, let me just say this, you're really good at what you do. Your presence in the media was just so radiant and shining. Like, you did a good job fitting in. But at the same time, there was this much bigger personality, this much truer to you personality behind that. And so I'm wondering for you, and because I think the more, kind of like personal we get, the more universal
Yes.
we really are. So if you don't mind, like, sharing, like, what are some of the things that you have done that are kind of that next level self-care? As you have made these decisions, as you have made these changes, I know for you, it's you've made physical moves, you've made professional moves, you made personal moves. What are some of the things that you have done to know, like, what does your nervous system need? How do you nurture yourself during these changes so that you can walk your talk?
I think I'll go back to the year 2017. It was December 31st. It was New Year's Eve. I had $7 in my bank account. I couldn't go out to a New Year's Eve party. I couldn't go do anything, but I could finally get my free membership to the library locally. And I went and I started to rent out all these books on self-help. I bought a Hot and Ready, and that was my weekend. And I sat with myself and I started to go through the process of, like, what is this that I'm feeling? This constant fatigue, this constant staring off in space and being like, I should be doing more, but I don't know what that means. And for me, which we can touch on this as well, my upbringing in my childhood had a lot of trauma, had a lot of poverty mindset, and a lot of criticism. So as we hear more and more in the world, when you become an adult, you take on that. They may not still be criticizing you, or they may not even be in your life, those people, but you take on those voices and that hovers over you every day. And for me, that's what it was. I couldn't separate between what was real and what was an illusion of the criticism. And so then you take on that threat, like even right now in the world, what millions of people are about to face with evictions, that's a threat to your nervous system. That is a threat to your safety. I have had my own experiences with facing evictions, losing the childhood home I grew up in, to foreclosure. Like, all of that is a threat to your nervous system, and it stores in your body, as I'm learning. I mean, I'm no doctor, I'm no psychologist, but I follow fantastic people that I have learned the importance of what is stored in your body and what is a threat to your nervous system. So then as you grow up and you become an adult and you have all these dreams and these visions and these hopes and desires, you still have this. This doesn't evolve. You may evolve, but you got to work even harder on the mind to match your hustle, to match your dreams. And if your mind and if your mental stamina is not strong, you're going to keep yourself in the same spot. And for me also personally, death is a big motivation for me. Just like many, I grew up around death, like older grandparents and uncles and aunts. So funerals became like a family affair. It was like, oh, I'm going to go see extended family members, but I also got to watch this person that I love sit there and not understand that as a kid. And then it was like a deeper call within me as a child that there was more that I was here to do. I wanted to move outside of the city I grew up in, out of my home. I didn't want the picket fence, the marriage, the kids, the all of that. I wanted to go see this great big world. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm not saying all of my choices have been great. I've made financial mistakes. I've made terrible, unplanned strategies, but I can honestly say to date, I've gone after pretty much everything that I've ever wanted. Not saying I got it, achieved it, maybe wrapped up in a couple boxes of failure and lessons, but I've gone after everything that I wanted to go after. And I think to me, that's success.
Oh my gosh. Yes, 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 yes. That taking the action. So the awareness of, okay, so if we're talking about a walk back to self-love, first of all, the awareness of your own desires, like dismantled from those family constructs and foundations, this societal expectations, the availability of, you know, what any of us on our life path might have available to us, to be able to say, like, regardless of what any of those things kind of line up for me, these are the things I want. These are the things I desire. And to be taking those actions. I love, you know, there's that phrase, you know, either feel the fear and do it anyway, or what would you do if you weren't afraid? What I'm hearing and what you're saying is a reframe around that. This is one of my favorite kind of reframes in, like, I'm going to tie this back to what you said about all of those, the framework of the stories, that, you know, how you were brought up and how that's kind of like running the show, regardless of what the situation is. But I think, you know, the question, what would you do if you knew fear was going to come along with you? What would you do if you knew that you could fail? Like, what's important enough that even if you know failure is a high possibility, you're going to go try it anyway. And I think that that's really important to create a relationship with fear, a relationship with failure, a relationship with those quote unquote negative stories, to recognize, you know, these are the trauma influences. These are the criticisms. These are the voices that are in my head, and to start pulling them apart and really noticing what's not yours. You know, those criticisms that either came from family members. I'm sure in radio, you had criticisms coming from left, right, center, behind, above, under, you know, like, especially as a woman in a male dominated industry, and one that is like, gossip is a big part of it, right? Like, talk and smack. And so to be able to separate out, whether it's these inner voices from childhood, or things coming at you in real time, what's mine and what's not mine? What are my, so that makes me think, well, is self-care really just like a heightened level of self-knowing, and then responding truly, authentically to that self-knowing? I love that you had a New Year's celebration that involved a library, like, escapade.
Yeah.
And
it was actually one of the most memorable New Year's that I've ever had, compared to going out and getting dressed up and going having, you know, drinks and dancing and all. I mean, that was all great, but there was something humbling about what I experienced in 2017, and the amount of dedication I was willing to face with myself to move me forward, even though there's going to be times, and this is the tricky thing about life, is one, you have to create space with others that you can share that authenticity and that transparency. And you will find very quickly, within seconds, if that person does not, I don't want to say deserves, but is going to be there for the rest of the conversation. You know, it's like if you start to feel a little bit criticized, you're like, ooh, okay, this isn't safe. But a lot of people in the world, I think, want to say, stop living in the past. I totally get it. I'm guilty of it. But there's a balance between living in the past and understanding what you've overcome. You just can't stay there. But breaking a habit, especially in something like your mind, you can escape someone who's criticizing you. You can walk out of a room of someone that insults you. But what happens when you can't escape yourself and you're trapped in your mind and you don't know where to go and you feel like your skin's going to crawl and you want to just escape your body? You can't go anywhere. So it's like, it's really difficult when people say, well, you just need to get over it. And you're like, really? Is that so crazy? I never thought about that myself, you know? And that's what I think self-love has in 2021 has turned out to be right now for me is taking care of the mind. And we see it now, even recently with Simone Biles and what she had to publicly admit and the type of action that she had to take to better herself with on a platform that I would not, I mean, that talk about a platform, you know, and the pressure. She had to put her mind and her mental health first and
Yes.
and accept the criticism, because it's gonna be there. People are gonna criticize you whether you're dead or alive. So are you gonna stop doing what you're gonna do or stop the dreams that you want, or are you gonna go after it knowing that people are gonna criticize you anyways? It's just a part of life.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I'm so glad you brought that up because, you know, I mean, Simone Biles working in a movement space. I think this is such a good example, and we can kind of like bring it home with this of when we prioritize connecting our physical, emotional, and mental health publicly. You know, you brought up, you know, when we have these conversations, and honestly, this is one of the reasons why I've been inspired to do this series is to normalize conversations with this, make it like tolerable to be authentic, to share our kind of touchy stories, to know that when we do share our vulnerable stories, when we bring to voice and with another, with a witness and within community, where our frayed nerve endings are, where our scattered minds are, you know, our shaky selves are, we can be held in
Yeah.
that community. You know, this whole move, and this is kind of my tip here, is that this self-love and self-care thing is not done in a vacuum. It's done in relationship. It's done, you know, I think that's what I've loved, Amber, about, you know, our deep phone calls we have every once in a while, you know, and then we can bring these topics to the table, you know, and I think that's what Simone has done for us is, you know, probably this very private thing that she has been going through, and she made this very public announcement. And those of us who are kind of on this level of consciousness about connecting physical health, emotional health, and mental health have all said, yes, thank you. Thank you for making that move. You have exemplified for us what we need to do when the platforms we are in, whether that's within our families, within our professions, within something very public, like where she is, but that it's that this is the model, the only sustainable model to practice self-love in. It's when we can make that decision and make that move. You know, you have been an example of that for me. I think that's a really great, you know, current event topic to exemplify that. And I think, you know, when we can really normalize things like that and make that common practice, we are more whole, you know, that our whole self, you know, your whole thing about authenticity and freedom, you know, all of these other hot topics. My hope is that when we are more embodied, when we are more connected within ourselves on that level, we can be more connected with each other and solve some of these really insane issues that we are going through as inhabitants on this planet right now.
Yeah, and I feel that the importance of self-love too, what I found in the last couple of years is the deeper that I go with myself is the deeper I can meet other people. And when you learn that you are unshakable and that you are confident with who you were created to be, then you have the capacity to develop and cultivate empathy to understand what's happening outside of maybe your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, your status, your financial box, all of these things that people just can't seem to understand. It's because we're disconnected from ourselves, our bodies. Therefore, you cannot understand what it's like to have another skin color and the trauma that's faced in society or whatever else that I had listed. You have to be in touch with yourself and have that compassion and empathy to understand what you wouldn't understand. You know, that's where you meet people.
Mic drop. Amber, that, yes, 100%. When we connect within ourselves, we, it's like removing all of those layers. I mean, and granted, when we do run on these trauma loops, whether they're from way, way in the past or something scary we are going through right now, we have, our fear is there for a reason. It's part of our human protective mechanism. We have to build defenses. We have to, do some self-protection, but it's when those things that we have built and developed for self-protection block us from relating to ourselves and relating to others. And when those things operate in like hyperactive mode and we are only operating behind these layers of self-protection, we do not know ourselves. We cannot love ourselves. And then therefore we cannot love each other. And I think that's it, that I love that you made that point of when like this, the real deal of self-love is, so if the more we connect within, the more that empathic connection with others opens up. All right, bring it home for us. What is your, you just mic dropped it. So if you have nothing else and be like, I'm out, but do you have like a favorite tip, a favorite resource, a favorite like quote, a favorite, like what is something our listeners can do to embark on their own walk to self-love or further it if they're already on it? Share your last little nugget, share where everybody can find you. Of course, I will share Amber's links in the show notes here, and then we'll close it for today.
I definitely want to say when it comes to the mind, Dr. Joe Dispenza is phenomenal. That's where I learned a lot about the nervous system and the threat to your body and how long it takes to break a habit, aligning with manifestations and law of attraction and all of that. He's a great resource. Also on Instagram, there's a woman, her handle is Holistic Psychologist. She talks about childhood trauma. She talks about relationships, betrayal to self, like all of that, like gritty work that goes deeper than the self-care and everything. That's another great resource. I just believe that stability starts from within. When you have a stable inner body, your outer life will mirror that. And that's something that I personally have had a challenge with my entire life. So it's because I've never been stable within and I've had to go on this path. So the deep dive inward is scary. It's messy. You're going to have people that you don't relate to anymore, not understand you. You're going to think, oh my God, maybe I'm crazy, but you got to dive in anyways, if you have the mental strength to do it. I understand that there are people that don't want to, and that's their choice. But if you're willing to go on that journey inward, it's absolutely worth it because of who you become on the other side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are, that's what I hope as we create a community that we are here for each other, that when that mental strength feels shaky, but you have that little spark inside that says, I need to move the needle forward. I do need to do something. I do need to learn something that, but I don't feel mentally strong enough to do it, that we have each other to lean on and say, borrow some of mine, or I will hold the riverbeds for you so that you can flow into this. Thank you so much, Amber. Where can we find you?
So I am on Instagram, amber.b.huyghe. And then my podcast is A Walk Back to Self-Love with Amber Huyghe on Apple, Spotify, and Anchor. And I do want to leave this one quote. This is one of my favorites. It's something along the lines of, we are both a masterpiece and a work in progress all at the same time. Yes. Because I think there's too much focus on perfection and not enough on, you can be both, because I'm a hot mess and I'm a strong pillar, so it's like, there's both. It's harmony.
Cheers to that messy middle. I love it. Amber, you are a shining light. I am so grateful for our friendship. I am so grateful for your
Likewise.
voice and that you have chosen autonomy and freedom. I can't wait to hear what else is coming down the line. Please follow Amber. If you don't already, find her podcast, find her on Insta. You guys, thank you so much for joining in on this conscious body conversation. It is my deep honor and pleasure to be working in this world of embodiment. If you're interested in learning some of those kinesthetic skills, those body skills, you can find me embodiedmovementtraining.com. Any of my other resources and places you can find me on the internet are on there. And please tune in for the next episode. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jessie. Bye, everybody.
Bye.